All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's New York Youth-Led Advocacy and Mentoring Town Hall. It's part of a series on youth-led advocacy and mentoring. My name is Adrienne Alicea, and I'm the Director of Advocacy at Mentor National, and I will be introducing today's panel. I'm really excited about today's panel. Just for some housekeeping notes, live captioning is available today. A link will go out in the chat box in a second and is also in the registration link for the event. It's also here. And they'll be following along in real time. 1 week after this town hall, all attendees will receive an email with instructions on how to access a webinar recording, and then some links to more resources on youth advocates for mentoring, on civics education, as well as a one-pager on this event and a recap as well. For today's webinar, all attendees are on mute for best sound, but that doesn't mean we don't want you to be involved and engaged in today's conversation. Please type any questions you might have for the panelists in the question box, and all of those questions will be answered during Q&A. If for some reason we run out of time, we'll make sure that we get back to you with our answers. So please feel free to use that and interact with us throughout the time as well. I wanted to ground you very quickly in today's webinar. So there's a strong belief that Mentor National, Mentor New York, and the entire network have deeply ingrained into the fabric of our work that young people really should be at the center of policy and advocacy solutions to systemic issues. So young people don't exist in vacuums. Everything that happens, policy changes, elections, advocacy, protests, everything impacts them. And mentors really have a critical role in both growing alongside them and learning themselves, right? But also supporting their advocacy and policy passions, their interests, which along at the same time, right, helps them develop their self-confidence, their leadership skills, and helps them actually make an impact on the issues and the systems that they are most impacted by. So about over a year ago now, Mentor started a program called Youth Advocates for Mentoring. It selected 12 young people from throughout the country to serve in a cohort where they would come together and learn about grassroots advocacy, policy, organizing, and how to basically effectively advocate for the issues they cared about. And each person in this program was a part of a mentoring program before they came to the program, and so they brought the skills and the supports that they had in their communities to this larger national program. They learned about how to effectively communicate with elected officials, how to start a grassroots campaign, how to leverage social media. You're going to hear all about the wonderful things that they worked on throughout this last year on today's call. They're really grounded in the fact that they spent the last year really writing a policy memo that was presented to congressional staff on an issue that they cared about. And so I just wanted to say today's webinar is really focused on honing in on some of the best practices, some of the best things that they learned about from working alongside adults, some of the opportunities that they had, and some of the things that they think that adults could do better in terms of supporting young people when it comes to advocacy. They have some really great tips for mentors, for mentoring programs, and then for young people who are also interested in advocacy on how they could partner better together and intentionally on advocacy. So I have the pleasure today of introducing our moderator, the wonderful and amazing CEO of Mentor New York, Brenda Jiménez. And so I'm going to leave it over to her.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. I really appreciate that. And the extra adjectives you used, I very much appreciate that. My name is Brenda Jiménez. I'm CEO of Mentor New York, and so honored to be here with all of you today, and most especially with these wonderful young women who are going to share their experience with YAM, with all of us. I became CEO December 2019 of Mentor New York, and very quickly had to pivot to what has become our new reality in and around having staff virtually, making sure that we were responsive to the needs of young people as we all experience a global pandemic and racial unrest. I would tell you that we were very quick to pivot and be nimble so that we could be responsive. Our program services increased by 35% within 27 weeks. The needs that young people face are many. And as we all navigate this together, I think relationships have become a really pivotal part of how we support and move young people forward into the future. I'm honored to say that this year, not only was the organization recognized for Organization of the Year for the Stevie Awards, we received a Silver Award, but I also have gotten recognized for my leadership and sort of our ability to pivot during this time. So I'm very grateful to be with all of you and to be able to share my story. And now I am going to allow these two young women who are with me today to present themselves. And Roxette Burgos will go first. Roxette, please share a little bit about yourself with the audience.
Hello, everyone. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I attend Rochester Institute of Technology. I'm 21 years old, and I major in electrical engineering. I'm currently on co-op as a systems engineering co-op at Lockheed Martin. My policy memo is on finding an alternative for youth incarceration. It's about creating a national task force. I know some states have raised the age and there is not technically any youth incarceration, but I just want to increase awareness about like the behavior and about the mental health that happens in within the youth incarcerated.
Thank you so much. And our next panelist is Deanna Ivette Maza, and I'll let her introduce herself to everyone.
Hi everyone, my name is Ivette Maza. I'm 21 years old. I'm a SEEK student at CUNY Queens College, a major in psychology and a minor in business. My policy memo is focused on providing quality education to English language learner students in the US public schools K through 12. I myself went through a lot of struggles during my journey in the education system. And so I used the policy memo to present solutions to the problems that I saw.
Thank you so much, Yvette. So I guess we've got to get started with this conversation, and no better way than to ask. We're in New York, where there are advocacy issues all over the place, right? You go to Washington Square Park, you go to upstate New York, there's always a rally or a chant or an issue that is facing a community. How did you come to the point where you said, this is what I'm most passionate about in and around advocacy and what you would focus on? Go ahead, Roxette, you could start.
Okay, well, to me, it was more of personal experiences and seeing experiences from people in my community. So the reason why I chose my policy memo was because when I was 10 years old, my brother, he was put in the system and he was arrested and put on parole. And I felt like the system didn't do much justice for him. And then eventually he was killed. So I'm not a big fan of what ifs, but I feel like if the system fought for him as much as they fight for other things, then just maybe he would have been here today. So that's why I believe that youth incarceration does less. They're not as beneficial as they should be. So that's why I had created the policy memo instead of just altogether canceling it. I felt like it'd be easier to create a task force to find recommendations to see what is helpful to be able to then have next steps once they figure out to like just demolish it.
No, I appreciate that, and I'm so sorry for your loss, but I know it's grounded you to be motivated, and it's an amazing motivation, right, to do that work. So thank you. Yvette.
I just want to allude, thank you, Roxette. We've worked together in YAM, and I always appreciate your vulnerability and your strength in putting all of your passion into the policy memo. In regards to the topic that I chose, it's also based on my personal experience and what I've also lived with my classmates going through the grades. English was not my first language. Spanish was. I live in a household where my parents are immigrants. I am the first of everything. I'm the first to go through everything. Um, and I grew up feeling and taking up that parental responsibility that I shouldn't have. I remember being in third grade having to translate these documents in addition to trying to understand them myself to my parents and my guardians, and seeing that the school did not provide the adequate resources so that I did not have to do that and so that I could just focus on my studies. I could now see later on, now that I'm in college, how poorly that affected me, and it affected my classmates' performance in their own education. And unfortunately, in the society that we are in, that then is reflected back onto us as a minority, saying that person, that student does not care. That student's parent, they don't want to be involved, right? They don't want to be in PTA meetings, when in fact, that's not necessarily the truth. Not everyone, not every parent has a privilege of having a 9-to-5 job. Not every parent has a privilege of having one job, right? And so there are just so many factors that I grew up trying to navigate and then translated onto my parents. That I decided that I wanted to change that. And so, uh, I have relatives that are younger and are still going through middle school and whatnot, and I still see the same issues going on. And I'm just here thinking, it's 15 years later, and I am now on the other side, but I see the child going through the same things that I did. And it's something that is irritating. It is something that is frustrating, but it's been taken and put into the policy memo.
Thank you for sharing that. And as someone who has had a similar experience almost 20 plus years before you, I can embrace and understand the frustration, right? And that we all together have to do more. And so my next question to the both of you sort of stems from, you're passionate about something, you tap into it, and then you write a policy paper. And then how do you take the topic and put it into action, right? So talk to me about how we go from passion to policy paper to an action plan. You want to take it, Ivette, and then I'll hand it back to Roxette?
Sure. It's definitely not a one way can solve it all for everyone. Every topic is different. Every passion stems from something different. And so I think it's important to take a note that it's okay if it looks a little bit different from your colleague who is also advocating for their own issue. Not everyone has necessarily the same path, but there are some ground guidelines, if you will, that can help transform that passion into the tangible plan. And one of the two things that I really have focused on is one, creating, I'm a very visual person, and so creating a roadmap. And that's something that also was taught to me, and I received help from in YAM, in creating a roadmap and having a visual of what are the goals, what are the SMART goals that I want to put in place that are needed in order for me to get to where I want to see the change that I'm looking for. And so making sure that the goals that are being put in place, like I mentioned before, being SMART, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. Because I found myself, when I wasn't really thinking of a plan, I would bump into another issue that I was passionate about, and then I would bump into another issue. And it's very easy to get overwhelmed and really not make progress. And so it's not whether about I have to choose between one or two. It's about, I'm going to focus on one, I'm going to achieve one, and I'm going to go to two afterwards. And so also the second thing is having a close people that have individual roles in that plan. So something that I would call, and was taught to me, your own personal board of directors. So, someone that's your motivator, that one person that you know you can go to, and they will hype you up, and they will tell you you can do this, and then they will tell you that you are smart and that you are, you know, you can do this. Someone who's perhaps has more experience than you and can give you more advice on the technical things, on how to accomplish things, whether it be, at least in my case, it was the grammatical side of it, and knowing how to write something cohesively and concise so that my message would get across. And also making sure that your map that you've created, that it's changing, because when it's changing, it means that progress is happening, and progress is good. We never want to be in a standstill moment. We always want to be going back, revising, editing, and seeing how we're making progress and getting better by the day.
Roxette, how would you add to that as far as, you know, how do you put it into tangible action?
I think, well, for me, so like my passion was to advocate about gun violence, and it's such a broad subject. So it was hard at first to try to figure out what specifically I wanted to try to change in the system. And I think it's important to narrow it down, because at first it was kind of like I guess I wanted to like change everything all at once, and it's important to narrow it down to one thing, and just start with that one thing and change that one thing. So like I would get off subject sometimes, so I'd have to make sure that I'm like focused. I think is an important thing, just to stay on track.
And I think that's right. It's the conundrum that all leaders have, right? And if we all had that figured out, then maybe some of these issues would have been resolved, right? But they're complex, right? And one thing builds on the other. And so as you're doing this work, what's central to it is your passion and your voices, and how you influence other people along the way, which I always think is super powerful and necessary in our society. So, what are some strategies that you think mentors and the adults in your life could use to help young people feel more heard in their environments and tap into that voice? Either one could take it. Go ahead, Roxette.
I think it's important for, because I don't, so to me, it was kind of like, I think it's important for you to understand first what advocacy is, because I think that a lot of youth, they see social media and they just automatically assume that advocacy is like marching on the streets, getting pepper sprayed, and they think that's the only fight that they have to do. So they need to understand that advocacy is just like supporting a policy. And the best way I think mentors can help youth find their voices, just personally to me, is just, I think, talking about different topics and allowing them to voice their own opinion. I think that's how it starts, and then eventually they'll just be as confident and be able to fight for it as much as through that conversation they can fight for it in their community.
I think just piggying off of what Roxette just mentioned, I think it's important for mentors to show and provide that safe and nutrient-rich environment in their own mentee-mentor relationship, because then the mentee can take and take what they know of what a safe environment looks like into the real world, so that when they do go on to speaking with other adults that they could strategize with and collaborate with, they can detect whether this is an ally or this is someone who perhaps just want to be a showy person and just wants to put this, oh, you know, we're supporting so and so, and etc. So knowing and being from a mentee perspective, being taught things like body language and understanding that from other people, or the psychology behind making a presence in a room and what that looks like, especially when you're a person of color. And if the mentor is a person of color, and if the mentor is comfortable sharing their own experiences of possibly any troubles they've had in any advocacy work that they've done in the past, so that they feel like they're not alone, and that they feel like this is not something that's necessarily completely new, and that there is progress to be made, and that they can do that. They're very much capable of doing that.
Yeah, and as you're talking, you are all sort of outlining what a mentor should be doing. And so tell us what we should not be doing as adults and mentors working with young people. What stifles your voice? What stifles your passion? What stifles this process for you? Go ahead, Roxette.
So I think a mentor shouldn't talk at them. I feel like it should be a two-way type of relationship. So you're not just the mentor, you are also a mentee. You guys are both teaching each other. And I think it's important because usually during a mentor-mentee relationship, the mentee is the one who's mostly vulnerable because they're discussing their life. So I feel like it should be, they both should, the mentor should also be vulnerable, just to show that that this is a safe space. It's they can both be comfortable with each other. And I believe that different mentors hold different purpose in people's life. So a mentor should understand what their purpose is and not create a purpose for the mentee. And yeah, I think that's important.
I completely and 1,000% agree on that, Roxette. I think sometimes mentors and adults in general, they generally hold on to the I have years of experience, I have wisdom, you have to listen to me. And granted, that is very beneficial for a mentee. That is absolutely welcomed and appreciated, and we can absolutely use that. But that doesn't mean you can overpower us, and that doesn't mean that your path dictates or outlines how my path will go. And so understanding that this is a collaboration, not someone following somebody else.
Yeah, and you know how hard that is for adults to do, right? So we are a work in progress constantly and need to be reminded. So I appreciate sort of that insight that you've provided. So you've gone through this process and you've mentioned a time or two that you both have had mentors and support to get through this advocacy, strategizing, and implementation process. So why don't you share with us, how your family members sort of embrace this process that you've been a part of, and what kind of mentors showed up or reinforced themselves during this process for you?
To me, for sure. So during GAM, we get an advocacy mentor, and that person was definitely there. My person was in California, and I'm in New York. So we have like time differences, but she was always there through text, through call, through email, even during the pandemic, going through that, writing the policy. So she definitely kept me grounded through it. Also, so my mother doesn't really know that much English, so it was kind of difficult trying to explain to her what this program was. But I think what kept me going, it was her, even though she didn't understand, she was just like, I'm so proud of you, I'm so proud of you. So that definitely kept me in a good place.
I would second that again. I think there's this sweetness and almost just like adorable feeling of when I'm trying to explain to my parents everything that I'm doing, and they're like, I don't know what you're doing. I don't understand, but good job. And I'm like, you know what? Thank you. That is all that I need. Thank you. And so it's about just feeling warm and like that I can rest and that I can recharge. And the feeling of that I'm meant to do what I feel that I'm called to do. And no matter how radical it may seem, or no matter how scattered it may seem, or whatever, that everyone that has been around me, whether it be my mentor or family members, that they believe that I'm going to figure it out and it's going to be fine no matter what. And so their hope in me definitely helps me when I'm feeling the most hopeless.
So I wonder, as you're talking to your peers about the work that you might be doing, or you observe your peers, what are some things that are holding them back from embracing mentoring relationships, maybe utilizing their voice for advocacy, or tapping into some of their own power um, as you navigate sort of, this pandemic, racial unrest, political uncertainty?
Personally, I think it has to do with, growing up, I was kind of like the only one out of my friend group to have like mentors from just programs that would come to school, and they would have like lawyers from like big firms to come and like mentor us and things like that. And I think something that would hold youth back would be the cultural barriers. Like you would expect a lawyer just they like so my lawyer was oh sorry, there's like noise in the background. My lawyer was a white female, and she had like regular um I don't know, life, and then college, and then law school. So it was just like simple. Well, I mean, I don't know her whole life story, so I don't know what type of simplicity, but I think it's a cultural barrier when you tell kids from like the neighborhood, oh yeah, you can go to high school, you can go to college, you can finish it, but they have things that are holding them back. And mentors, a lot of mentors around the neighborhood, they don't understand that. They won't be able to understand that. So it's difficult to explain that to youth, especially when they see violence, when they see all these things, when they see adults that are not doing just not going to college and things like that. So um, yeah, there's a cultural difference there.
One of the things that I struggled with a lot, and in certain moments I still do, is imposter syndrome, right? And feeling like I don't belong. What am I doing here? I can barely pronounce Manzani in English. I'm not gonna try it right now because I mean, So it's feeling that you don't belong. And I've spoken to my peers before that I have seen me doing everything that I am, and they almost see me as, you do that because you actually have the courage and you're kind of a little bit crazy. I'm going to be here in my safe zone into what I know. And it's unfortunate because one of the things, it stems from that, from feeling like they can't, but also the lack of representation. I always mention, I did not know that an Ecuadorian could be a professional until my freshman year of college. I did not know that a Latinx individual could be an author until my freshman year of college. These things where others know and grow up having aspirations from a child, I want to be an astronaut, I can be a lawyer. You can see the disparity and how it affects the individual, and how poorly they can internalize that and feel like, no, my voice doesn't matter. And that's one of the reasons why I also applied to YAM, is because it was one of the first time that it was told to me, no, your voice does matter. We want to hear what you want to say. We want to help you. You're okay. This is where you belong. And so that false idea, and in addition to what Roxette mentioned, that cultural differences. I know in my culture, it's you're deemed as weak if you ask for help, right? You're deemed as, if you're identified as a man, you're not being a man if you are seeking mental health help or whatnot, something along those lines. And so I don't necessarily know how to tackle it on a grand scale, but I do know that on an individual basis, I almost always try to somehow bring it up, because from coming in a place where I've been there and still sometimes am there, the person sometimes need it and doesn't even know it. Like sometimes we need help with things and we don't even know it until the person says it out front and outright how it is, because not a lot of people are saying it how it is.
So clearly representation matters. Clearly it's not a lack of stories, it's the access to the stories, right, that reflect who you are from a young age, and those things have shaped the way you feel and see the world around you. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're not broken. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. You just need to be accessed. And that's a different sort of mindset and construct that we have to think about as we're approaching young people. And I think that that's really powerful and completely understand. And so as you're going through this, you have moments of uncertainty. Your friends think, oh, she's brave, a little crazy, so she'll go this way. Roxette is a do-gooder, she'll figure it out. But that doesn't mean that, courage and doing good and doing right doesn't come with a lot of doubts and doesn't come with a lot of moments of pause. And so how do you break through those walls so that you could get to the other side? What have you done?
So for me, I kind of get when I feel like I'm stuck, I tend to stay there. So like if I'm taking a break from life and then I end up taking 2 days instead of one, and then it becomes three. I kind of like go by these 3 steps. The first step is I breathe. I try to clear my mind because I think a lot, and I try to calm myself down. And then the second step is just take a step, a baby step, small, tiny, tiny step, like whether it being just going for a walk or something, just take one step. And then my third step is just to repeat them. Repeat the first 2 steps until I feel more functioning and get out of my little funk and my stuck behavior.
That's really great advice. How about you, Yvette?
Uh, One of the things that I do is hone in and just focus on the things that make me feel like a little kid who is safe and can just play. That I can just play and I can be me. Whether that be painting or whatever it may be, the activities change according, again, what I feel like doing, right? Because kids really don't think of consequences. They just do and they say, haha, I had fun. So I try to hone into that, and I try to give myself room and space to be free in however that decides to transform and transcend. Um, I have recently been trying to understand where my family comes from within Ecuador. And unfortunately, I don't have access to grandparents, just because of the family structure, and some are dead, some are living, and just it's complicated. But I've been trying to hone in and hold on the things that I grew up doing that my mom did, whether that be, burning Palo Santo all over me and or incense, and I literally just put it around me. I'm like, this is going to be okay. I am okay. And just breathing that in and being okay. And so just, telling myself positive, affirming statements, and not trying to be rigid on, I need to do this, I need to do that, and having a moment for myself where no one can tell me how to be, how to act, how to think, with no one without feeling that pressure that somebody depends on me and that I need to act now or else their life is depending on me. And that it's okay to be, I don't want to say selfish, but just it's okay to just focus on me for now.
Yeah, and there's really, selfish is not a dirty word. It's necessary, right? It's about self-preservation and your own sort of self-perception and how we maintain healthy. I have a friend who always tells me, if you have a basket of fruit and you're always handing it out and no one ever replaces the fruit, what will you have left to hand out, right? And so it is part of the act when you're a giver to receive as well. So it is a realistic thing to ask for. And I think it's an important reminder that it's okay to sit with yourself and to give yourself pause, but then to get yourself up and get moving again, right? So that you're renewed and rejuvenated and you restart. And that all those cultural pieces and the family and the warmth of family are a really intrinsic part of how many of us, when we have those things, can get through, and then how mentors can help us along as we go as well. So I really appreciate that. As I look at New York and I look at the fact that, there are protests, there is a global pandemic that has totally highlighted all the injustices that can happen from, an economic and racial inequity that exists in our state. How should young people, or what advice would you give young people around harnessing their advocacy? Because it's a lot. It's coming at them in every direction. And to Roxette's earlier point, showing up to a march or a rally is only the first step. And then what's the next step? So if you had to give advice around how do they get involved in a deeper way beyond that march, right, in advocacy, what would you suggest?
Um, I think you should try at a local level. Yes, there is protesting, but there's also things. There's like the I am drawing a blank. It's the council meetings. There's the town halls that mayors do and state legislators and different elected officials do, where you can voice your opinion. There's ways where you can give out public comments and just things like that. You can call their offices and communicate with them that way, or even if you're not even comfortable speaking with actual elected officials, talk to your peers about it, talk to constituents, and just start that conversation. Whatever is making you angry. I don't. Okay, so angry is not. I don't see angry as a negative thing. It's whatever starts your passion and makes you want to make a difference. It also, I think the the first step is just to have a conversation and do your research and see what other places are doing and be able to make change within your community.
I think, just in addition to what Roxette said, just to follow up, and consistency is key. That's what I really just narrow it down with. Yes, one event, two events, maybe even three events can make a push, a little shove. But if you're not consistent, you're not going to get to where you want to be. And so understanding that all the good things in life don't come easy, and that this is a marathon that you're running. This is not a little quick battle that you're just going to fight. This is a whole war that you're a part of, and that this is not just all on you. It is many people that you're working with, whether you know them or not. And so really understanding and that this is in it for the long run, even if I don't see the results immediately. And sometimes you don't want to wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning to attend a meeting. Sometimes you just don't. But telling yourself, listen, this 9 o'clock meeting, this is going to add up. This is going to make eventually a good push to what I want to get to. And so giving value to the little things, even though in the moment they seem insignificant.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And Roxette, I don't think you used the wrong word. I think a little bit of anger because it's unfair is what fuels and ignites the passion, and then you harness it, right? Because being angry with no purpose is just angry, right? Being angry with some purpose gives you some focus to harness it and to fuel that passion to move it forward. And I think to your point, Yvette, you're absolutely right. It is about the little things, right? It is the mosaic of a lot of work that allows it to go to scale, and knowing that your part matters, right? If we talk about what just happened with voting, everybody says, what difference does one vote make? It makes a difference, right? One at a time, we get to where we need to go. So I have a final question for the both of you before we invite Adrienne back. And I think it's really important. We've sort of talked about the fact that we're in the midst of a global pandemic going into a second or third wave, depending on where you are in this country. Definitely the highlighting of the racial inequities in this country and the work that has yet to be done. There's been great progress and still a lot of work to do. Tell me, how are you navigating social distancing, navigating racial injustice, navigating a global pandemic in the midst of your college career where you should be academically focused, but also having some fun. And with the passion and the fervor you have to make change in community. Tell me how you're navigating.
Well, so I've been attending a lot of the council meetings have been online and live now instead of in person. So I was actually able to attend most of them since I am away in college, so I'm like in a different city and I've been for a while. So it has been easier to be able to see what they're passing locally and to see just being updated on things like that. As far as trying to navigate everything that's going on, I try to stay away from social media, like take a break from it. It has been like watching all the videos of everything that's going on. It definitely takes a toll on my mental health, so I try to stay away from it. And really, while I'm also staying away from while I'm also staying away from it, I'm also making sure that I'm informed of what's going on, and seeing what's being passed, things like that. And then as far as other things, I've been like trying to take on new hobbies. So I started learning how to play the violin. I've attempted to do at-home workouts. It's been a little rough, but I've still been trying to be consistent. And then with school, it's just a rocky hill that you just have to keep on pushing.
Yeah, I hear you. How about you, Yvette?
I think I've been focusing on how to combine my passions into my hobbies. And so I mentioned earlier, I like a lot of painting and I like a lot of art. I'm a very creative mind. And so I've been trying to how to voice the issues that I'm trying to address through that lens, and seeing how that those issues can be voiced through other additional lens, different mediums, and how to reach others through that. Because unfortunately, not everyone can receives the message the same way. And so trying the best way to expand it so that everyone can use all their senses and receive it and acknowledge it, and hopefully also want to participate in it. And so that's been a big thing. But when we're talking just about soul hobbies, I picked up the ukulele earlier this year. I was like, I'm going to buy myself a ukulele. I'm going to teach myself how to play this ukulele. So I haven't been as consistent as I would like to. School is the semester is around the corner. It's going to end soon, and so that has taken a lot of my time. But I try to do things that just ignite that little kid inside of me. I like to be curious about a lot of things, and I let myself be curious. If I'm jumping from like a month ago, I was reading the textbook about neurons and just how complex the brain is, and then this week I'm doing ukulele because why not? And so letting myself be free too.
Well, that's pretty amazing. So if I've gotten anything out of your recommendations is you have to have a lot of curiosity. Clearly, it has to have an instrument in it. So I've got to get with the program and get my COVID instrument going. And definitely about giving yourself the permission to take a respite, right, from everything that you're doing. So I really appreciate that. So I think we have a question that Adrian has put on the chat box for us, and I'll open it up to you guys. How does a mentoring program get a young person more interested in advocacy, especially if they're not already having an interest in it? How could they spark that in young people?
I think they probably already have an interest in it and they just don't know. Like I said before, not many people know the definition of advocacy is just supporting a policy. So if you just talk to them about different topics, what gets them angry about their community? What bothers them about something nationally or something internationally? And just from that very conversation, you can just point out to them, like, it's this what you like? Are you interested in this? This makes you angry. Why don't you try to do something to change it?
I think also bringing on other youth that are already in the works of doing their own advocacy shows them that, yes, I can do that too. And going back to what I mentioned earlier of the importance in having that representation and seeing that someone my age has done this and that I can do it too, and that they also have provided a way in which I could use as an example to apply to whatever issue I'm passionate about. And it takes brainstorming, like Roxette mentioned. It really does. Sometimes you're so caught up with the hustle and bustle and you're in it and you have school and you have work and you have family and you have so many, you have bills to pay that sometimes it's like, I don't have time for that. But when you sit down and you really brainstorm and you think, like Roxette mentioned, you're bound to find something, because especially if you live in New York, you're gonna find something.
And there's always someone trying to solve the problem, right? Or the challenge or the issue. And I think to your point, once you start to figure out the things that they'd like to see happen differently in their community, then how do we help them tap into those young people that are already doing their work to further ignite the passion, right? So it's definitely about, according to the both of you, listening, asking, and being intentional, right? Okay, we have another question. What kind of resources are out there for advocacy training for mentors to provide to youth? And so I know that Adrian and the team at the national office are working on those pieces, and through this YAM initiative probably have resources that are readily available to mentors and programs to be able to support that. Is that fair to say? Okay, took that one off your list. I figured you didn't want to go completely into that. What are your plans for the future regarding advocacy, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or you could try, where do you see yourself next year and maybe the year after?
So in 5 years, I see myself probably, well, I'd be graduated from college already, most likely going into my master's in some engineering discipline. Not sure yet, but also I would most likely be moved out of Buffalo into whatever job I'm in, but still making sure that I'm working within the community, because I believe any company should always have like a community aspect into it. So like that's where I'm at. Lockheed Martin has different like mentoring opportunities and programs. So here there's definitely a lot of protests going on and different things within the community. So I definitely have stayed involved in making sure my voice is heard, whether it be at their council meetings here, at their protest, and whether it be just being able to provide food and something to drink during the protests and things like that, making sure I'm involved at a local level.
In 5 years, I would really have wanted to made one of my recommendations in the policy memo have some kind of fruit and see it in physical form. For those of you who don't know, one of the recommendations was to create a physical booklet for parents or guardians that give them at the introduction of every year of the student a guideline as to what that student is going to be receiving for that grade and what as a parent they should be expecting for their child to receive, and also what their role as a parent is. And also just basics, right? How does the academic calendar differ from the regular January to December? Just very basic things that schools assume that parents already know, and things like that. I would really want to see that done and implemented, if not New York, even more. But also on a personal, another advocacy issue is bringing my Ecuadorian culture more into the mainstream. Um, uh, Again, that lack of representation that has failed me, and I don't want it to be the same for the younger people in my family and in my community. And so, whether it be through art or clothing or whatnot, there's different projects in mind that I'm looking to cultivating and seeing. And there's more projects that I have, but that's more later on in the 10-year mark. But trying to see the physical results of the things that I'm working on now.
Well, I am certain that the next 5 years, this will not be the first time we hear of you or the last, and that you will do amazing things. So I'm putting some money on that. Our next question is, how does a mentoring program become a Mentor New York partner? It's actually pretty easy. You could go to our website, mentornewyork.org, register for a webinar, reach out to us for technical assistance and support. And our services are free to low cost for programs that we partner with to look at how we can better support you in having intentional relationships with young people in whatever activity that you're engaged with them. So another question, are there other advocacy issues that you are both interested in and would like to pursue further?
So yes, and I think it kind of lit up more this year than any other year, of course, about the racial disparities in not only nationally but also in the engineering field. So I attend a predominantly white institution, and my graduating class, there is I believe it's 4 of us, 4 Black people that are graduating as electrical engineering major, and 2 of us are women. And I think it's important that there is more representation in the engineering discipline. Like Ivette had mentioned before about imposter syndrome. Every single time I go to class, I feel that, and just that's very important for me. And like I'm involved in different programs on campus where we're trying to get more representation and making sure that we're mentoring the younger engineers of color to be able to make sure they stay in the field and to understand that yes, there are difficulties, but there's still, these are just some barriers that you'll face and it's completely normal. So yes.
One of the issues that I'm really focused on and interested in is just environmentalism and our role in it, and most importantly, how we as an individual can change our lifestyle to contribute to a positive um, result, a positive impact. Because I think, yes, it's important to understand what is going on with the climate, understand all of these factual scientific evidence that is real, but also translating on what I can do. And going back to the, yes, not using that plastic straw does matter, but going beyond that plastic straw, right? And taking it a step above from just a trend. Um, I would see these photos, these trendy, right, photos of someone holding a metal straw or a glass straw in a plastic cup. And it's like, thank you, but there's more that you could do, right?
Right.
And so things like, right, having your own shopping bag and reusing that, reusing already the things that you have around the house, and living in a linear economy with a circular economy mindset, right? And so really educating others on how they can take practical steps and still enjoy the life that they want to live, but just in a more sustainable, minimal, wasteful way.
One final question, very quickly. Knowing what you know about mentoring and advocacy, what would you advise young people?
I think I would advise, I think it's important to have mentors, not just one. Because I don't see mentor as an adult. Speaking to me, I see mentor as a friendship, and I've had many friends throughout my life who have helped me and guided me and advised me on different things. So I think it's important to take out that that um, that definition of what mentor is and see it as more as a friendship. And yeah.
I would just put it simply as we need you. We need you. Whatever thoughts, whatever other people may be saying that, you're crazy, you're going to be wasting your time, you don't even know the real things that are going on, you can always learn, you can always improve. And there are plenty of people that would gladly welcome you and guide you and teach you in how to be a participant and make the change that you want to. The important thing is that you want to do something. And that's really the hardest part when from an advocate side is making people care. If you care, you'll get through. It'll be hard, absolutely, like everything is, but we need you.
Well, Roxette, Ivette, thank you so much for spending the afternoon with me. As a Latina leader in this movement, you make me so thrilled to know that the next generation of Latina women coming up are bosses. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing, for the commitment to community, and for being part of this movement and elevating young people across this country with what you've done in YAM. Adrian, thank you so much, Mentor National, for always having me as a partner. If you want to get in touch with us in the audience, thank you for hanging in there with us. I hope that you enjoyed this afternoon. Roxette and Ivette are excellent, and I could hear the applause, even though they're not there. And for anyone who wants more information about YAM or Mentor National, mentoring.org, mentornewyork.org for Mentor New York information. I am sure that we're happy to connect you to Roxette and Ivette and the YAM team should you need to talk to more young people to get inspired and see what the bright future of this country looks like. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I am blessed to have the both of you as my leaders today. Have a great afternoon. Take care.